Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Bible 365 with Kathy Carter. That's me. Uh, Today is day 2. And so today we are going over Genesis 4 through 6. And we are also doing 1 Chronicles 1 1 through 4. Just to give you a little bit of taste of, if you haven't seen this, if this is the first thing that's popped up for you, I am going to be reading the Bible every day for a year, and we have just started. So, but I'm reading through the Bible every day for a year, and I'm just kind of going to give my thoughts, my opinions, my untutored and uneducated ideas on what I see when I read the Bible. I feel like it's there for all of us. We all have Bibles in our houses, and we are all able to read from them. And I find reading from it to be really exciting, and I find the information to be so valuable in everything that I do in my life. Not just basic instructions before leaving Earth, which is a fun acronym, but really it strengthens my faith, so I'm able to live in a way where Jesus is first and foremost in my life, and so I'm able to behave in such a way, not through just good deeds, but through my love for Christ and all that He has done for me. And so that helps me with everything I do every day. So I wanted to share this, and I wanted other people to share along. And what I'm hoping is that we can collectively, as a mass, read through the Scripture, and then when we read through the Bible cover to cover and see how amazing it is, then encourage other people to do the same. And so day 1, we did Genesis. I did Genesis 1 through 3. In Genesis 1 through 3, what I discovered was on day 1, God created the earth and everything that was in it, and 6 days to create. Day 7, He rested. And then in chapter 2, God created man and woman and all the things that came with that, all the details that He gave them. And in day 3, not in day 3, in chapter 3, the serpent came and tempted Eve, and the two of them ate fruit. Adam and Eve both ate fruit, and there was corruption in the world after that. Whether it be a consequence, whether it be a punishment, a curse, a mixture of both, is probably one that we could talk about in further detail, but that is not today. So today we move on to Genesis 4 through 6. And again, we're adding in 1 Chronicles 1 1 through 4. I am using what's called the 1-year chronological online Bible. And so there's also a book that goes with it, and I use the NIV version of that book. So in chapter 4, where we come to in chapter 4 is where we meet Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel are children of Adam and Eve. And the first verses I want to read are from 4, 6 through 7. And so in that it says, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it.'" And the reason I this one stood out to me was because earlier in the verse it shows, or earlier in the chapter it shows that Cain and Abel both give an offering to God. So depending on what they do, one works the land, one works with animals. And so we see that one gives fruits to the Lord and one gives meat to the Lord, so fat portions and things like that. And not really knowing why, there's not really a whole lot of detail. One pleases the Lord and one doesn't. And so it brings me to this, where God actually says, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? Which leads me to believe that in doing this, he did not do what was right. And so if you don't do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you. And so we kind of move on to say that instead of Cain repenting, or instead of Cain being understanding, or instead of Cain uh, loving God and going back and changing whatever it is that he did, or working on whatever he did for the next time, he instead calls his brother out to the field and he kills him. And so he doesn't learn or grow or change or try and show love or listen to even what God says in his heart. It seems like he just continues in that route. So sin does crouch at the door and it has him, and he can't rule over it. He chooses not to rule over it. Instead, what he does is he just continues on that path of being sinful. He believes it's sort of his right, because he even comes out and he lies to God. So God asks where his brother is, and he says, "What am I, his keeper?" With this, what I would consider this snarky tone, because he clearly knows where his brother is. And so, because he's killed him. And so he doesn't tell him. And then after the Lord punishes him, he says, "It's more than I can bear. I will be a restless wanderer of the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me, and I will be hidden from your presence." So even after he continues to do wrong, he never sees his own failure. He never chooses to do better. He never chooses to be humble or to be sorrowful. Like, we never see any of that in his demeanor. His demeanor is so prideful and so dark and so demanding, right? He believes that he deserves better. And in all of that, it looks to me as if God is devastated. He says, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me." That Cain has killed one of God's children. And so it's got to be heartbreaking for God. But instead of God destroying Cain, as some of us would think that he should, or it would be great if he did, he doesn't. He actually protects him. And he says, people won't be able to kill you. He's going to put a mark on them, so then he would have vengeance on them instead. And then it even follows along to say that he continues to have children. So then Cain has kids, and Cain's kids actually say in this verse following, verse 24, it says, "If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times." And so he continues to perpetuate in his line this um, this this idea that he deserves better than he got. That he went and he killed people. Lamech goes and he kills people. He murders people for hurting him. And yet he says that God's going to avenge him in the way he avenged Cain. And Cain did the wrong thing, and Lamech is doing the wrong thing, and they expect all of these things from God. And so it's, for me, a sad way to look at the gift that we have been given, and instead of honoring what God has given to us and then listening, like God offered him, he said, "Don't let sin crowd, sin's going to crouch at your door." And instead of offering and listening to what he has to offer him, he instead turned it around and he continued to do whatever he wanted to do anyway. And I feel like he broke God's heart in doing that. So then we move on to chapter 5. Then Adam and Eve continue to have more kids. But we move on to chapter 5. And in chapter 5, it's a genealogy, which I find super fascinating, even just looking at a lot of those names. One of the things that I see is there's another Lamech down in the line of Seth. So in Cain's brother has all these children, or children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, further down the line. And Lamech is another name in that. And so you would think that he wouldn't want to name his kid that, because it doesn't seem to go well on the other side. But he does. So I'm always interested and fascinated in what some of the names are in that. One of the other things I see is in verse 24, Enoch is one of the people that is in Seth's line. And it says, "Enoch walked faithfully with God, and then he was no more, because God took him away." So spoiler alert, he comes back up in the book of Hebrews. But I am amazed that Enoch doesn't die. At least that's what it sounds like when I read it. It doesn't say everyone else. It said that they lived a certain amount of years and then they died. And yet Enoch walked faithfully and he was no more. And so God took him away. And so I just wonder what his life looked like as he was living his life. What did it mean to walk so faithfully that he didn't die and he was just taken? We haven't seen that since, as far as I know. Actually, that's not true. I think we do find out later that somebody else does the same thing. But for the most part, everybody dies. That's just one of the things of life. And then we move on to chapter 6, where we meet Noah. So this genealogy of Seth, we go down and down until we meet Noah. And one of the things that stands out to me in this chapter is when we go into verse 2. So starting at verse 1, It says, when human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. So a few of the things that stick out are that human beings, right? This is something different than he's mentioned before. And then the sons of God marry the daughters of humans. And so the sons of God don't seem to be us. So what does that mean that they are? Are they, I'm just putting some things out there, are they angels that have fallen, similar to what we eventually find out Satan does? And then they come and they impregnate. So I'm gonna also say that they weren't great because they married any of them they chose. Sounds to me like the women didn't have a choice in this situation, that the men, sons of God, saw the women and then they took them. So it seems like they're not good. And therefore, so then, but where do they get their name from? And then right after that, on verse 4, it says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. And also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. So it seems like these sons of God impregnated daughters of humans, and they had this people group called the Nephilim. They were heroes of old, men of renown, so that whatever they seemed to be something that everybody knew who they were at the time. So whether they were big or they were great warriors or they were whatever it is, it seemed to be something that everybody knew about, and they were very uniquely different from human beings, from us. All right, and then we go to verse 6. So this is where it gets tricky. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. I'm going to continue. So the Lord said, I will wipe them from the face of the earth, the human race that I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. To be so bad that God regrets that he made us. And I think that seems to be something I think about. Why didn't he, when we, when human beings, I say we as if I was one of them, but when human beings, when Adam and Eve chose to immediately disobey, one of the things that God said, why didn't he wipe them from the earth then and start all over again? But he didn't. He continued to give them opportunities to come to him. And it looks to me like God wants us to join with him. He wants us to make this choice of ourselves, that he gives us these boundaries and these loving rules in order for us to agree to them and draw closer to him and be with him. Because time and time again, we let him down. Time and time again, we don't obey these boundaries that he's created for us. And he just never completely gets rid of us. And even in this situation, he didn't. He only destroyed most people. But the sadness that I see in it is because that we don't obey, everything else suffers because of that as well. Because it wasn't just us that were taken down. It was the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move on the ground. So he took out everything except for this small little bit that he saved. He takes out everything because of what we've done. We are responsible for, and this is a great responsibility for us as humans on the earth right now. We are responsible for everything in front of us on this earth. We are responsible for the animals, for people around us, for ourselves. We are responsible for the grossest of the gross bugs and snakes and all this. We're responsible for all of that. We're responsible for the ocean. We're responsible for the land. And so we have all these responsibilities. And how are we using that responsibility? How are we handling all of that we have been given? Because when we handle it poorly, it's not just that things go wrong immediately. It's that the earth continues to be punished for our misdeeds. And the earth was a perfect creation that we seem to have taken advantage of and not used properly. And I think that continues to show itself even now, right? Even now, where people fight for certain things in the environment and things like that. And it is because we are supposed to be protecting that. We are supposed to be taking care of that. And so what then does that look like for us? And then we find that the person that he chooses to save and chooses to continue the rest of the world with was Noah. And so when we go right to verse 9, it says this is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man. So that is a word that is a challenge, because what does it mean to be righteous? Was he perfect? Was he sinless? Well, it says right after that, he was blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. So there was something God saw in everybody else. And even if we go back to that Cain and Abel idea, right? What did he see in Cain and Abel? Like, what was the difference in them, right? Because they both gave an offering. They were both sons of him, of Adam and Eve, right? They were both there, and they were both doing their duty. And yet he could see in one that the offering was good, and he could see in the other that the offering was not good, that he did not do right. And so I feel like this is that same picture with Noah. He could see that Noah was a righteous man. Noah walked faithfully with him. And I feel like here we go again. This is a call on us to what does it mean to walk faithfully with the Lord? Does that mean that we have to follow every rule? And I don't know if Noah did that. I don't know if that was possible. It seems like when Adam and Eve ate from the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that the descendants from there on out all had sin. And yet Noah was righteous. And if we go down to verse 22, God told him to do all these things, right? God told him to build a boat. God told him that this is what a boat is going to look like. God told him to bring animals on board. And like, whether you believe or don't believe exactly the story of Noah, the reality is what he asked him to do under any time in history seems like an idea of complete insanity. Like, you're taking years to build a boat. You may or may not be, probably isn't a fisherman. We have no proof that he has anything that has to do with the waters. And he's telling him to do all this, and then he's telling him to collect these animals. Again, is he a zoologist? Why would he collect all these animals? So what he's asking him to do is so far and above and beyond anything that would be considered the norm. And yet Noah, verse 22 again, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. So Noah obeyed, and he did everything, and he continued to walk faithfully with God. And so I think that is a really important thing to note in my own faith. What does walking faithfully look like? And for me, I know obedience is always really tough. I always just want to have my heart change towards certain matters. And it doesn't look like that's exactly what the picture is. It looks like obedience is really important when I hear God's commands to do what he asks me to do, and to do it with a loving heart, and to do it faithfully and joyfully for him, even if I don't agree with it, or even if I don't understand it. I believe that is what God is looking for. And so that is our chapters for today. Again, we got 4 through 6. So tomorrow, January 3rd, we have a lot. It's going to be Genesis 7 through Genesis 10. And then we have a little bit of First Chronicles in there. I think a little bit of some genealogy and stuff in there. And so I am hoping that you will join me again tomorrow. If this video was helpful at all, if you enjoyed it, if you want to listen to more, please, I want you to like the video. I would like you to share the video. I'd love if you subscribed to the channel, because what that's going to do is that's just going to push it out towards other people, so other people can read and do the same. If you guys really want to spread the word about faith and about God and about what it means to read God's word, I would love if you guys would do that. Thanks, and see you next time.